When it comes to living your financial life, your best life now, your best financial life is experienced when you live without debt and with a plan. You live without going into debt, and you live with a budget, a financial plan. I'm not saying, you're saying debt is sinful? I'm not saying debt is sinful. I have a house debt. I have debt, but it's not often wise. Proverbs chapter 22, verse 7 says, the borrower is slave to the lender. Okay, that's not a positive view of debt. The borrower is slave to the lender. Debt is not a tool. Some of you are saying, no debt. How can I live in America without having debt? What about the FICO score? How am I going to buy a house? How am I going to do this? How am I going to rent an apartment? You got all of those questions, but you just step back for just a minute and begin to ask yourself the question in light of your future hopes and dreams when it comes to your finances, in light of where you're at right now, and in light of your past experience, is it wise to go into debt? In this area, this area. Maybe you're going to go into debt on your home, but is it really wise to put all of those fried chicken sandwiches on your credit card? I mean, is it really wise? Do you really have to put the new shoes on the credit card? Debt, the borrower is slave to the lender. Some of you say the budget. Can you say boring? I don't want to do a budget. That's a straitjacket. I don't want a budget. Just ask yourself the question, what is the wise thing to do? What happens is we usually go into debt because we want to keep up with the Joneses, right? Or as I was listening to Siri read me my sermon this morning. She doesn't know how to pronounce Joneses. She says the Joneses or something like that. Here's the truth. The Joneses are broke. The emperor has on no clothes. Most people who look wealthy, and we leverage debt because we want to present ourselves as wealthy, but nobody has the wealth. They just look like it. They're pretending. As Warren Buffett said, as soon as the tide comes out, you can tell who was skinny dipping. Okay, and as soon as there's a financial crisis like you had in 2008, or as soon as everything goes bust and you lose your job, you're in trouble. Why? Because you used debt thinking debt is going to create prosperity. But what really did, when you went into debt, you inherited a risk. And the risk that debt brings is almost never worth the prosperity it might create in almost every instance. And so you reject debt. Now, the debt snowball is basically taking your debts and listing it from the very smallest to the very largest on a sheet of paper, and then paying minimum payments on everything but the smallest debt. And you put everything that you can on that debt until it goes away. You knock out the smallest debts first, and over time you knock out number 1, number 2, eventually number 3, and all the money that you were putting on number 1, now you can put it on number 2, so you have number 1 money and number 2 money all going on the same debt, and eventually you begin to knock these debts off, and eventually you finally knock off the last one, and you have a huge party, and everyone's happy. You have to get this dumb debt out of your life because it will choke you. It will make you miserable. It will bring nothing but worry and anxiety. And so you get out of debt. Proverbs chapter 6, verses 1 to 5. This is a financial piece, talks about getting gazelle intense, getting focused on getting rid of your debt. It's from Proverbs 6, verses 1 to 5. It says, give your eyes no sleep and your eyelids no slumber. Save yourself like a gazelle from the hand of the hunter, like a bird from the hand of the fowler. In other words, when it comes to your debt, run. Stay as far away as possible. Last week we looked at Paul's, when he talked about sexual immorality, he said, flee sexual immorality. And basically what Proverbs is saying, if you want to be wise with your finances, flee debt. Don't get out of debt as fast as you can. That's number 1. You live life without debt. You get passionate. You got to get sick and tired of being sick and tired. You have to be serious about this. It's not just whenever I get around to it or whenever I make this much money. Today, you start getting out of debt. That's number 1. Number 2, you live without debt, and then you live with a budget.